Welcome, everyone, to another episode or show organized by Area Express Media on the occasion of International Women's Month. This year's theme for International Women's Day 2021 by the National Union of Eritrean Women is Eritrean Women, Pillar of Resilience and Development. And today I have two great guests, Her Excellency Christine Umutoni and Comrade Senait Lijam. Her Excellency Christine is currently serving as UN Resident Coordinator in Mauritius and Seychelles, coordinating UN work and representing the UN Secretary General in a multi-country setting. Many Eritreans know her as previously serving as the UN Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator as the UNDP Resident Representative in Asmara between 2012 and 2017. Prior to her assignment at the UNDP in Eritrea, she was the country director in Zimbabwe from 2009 to 2012. Her Excellency Christine has much experience. Prior to joining the UN system, she was a development consultant with the focus on governance and gender. She also worked within the capacity of UNDP Rwanda, especially the Survivors Fund post the Rwanda genocide. Before that, she had worked with the government of Rwanda in various capacities, including the Rwandan ambassador to Uganda from 2002 to 2004, the ambassador to Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, the EU, the Vatican, also while she was based in Brussels from the year 2000 to 2002. I could really go on all day about her incredible resume, but we have her here today as a friend of Eritrea who also has had experience in the liberation struggle of her own country of Rwanda. With us, chiming in from Asmara, we have Senait Lijam. She finished high school at Lu'ul Makonnen Secondary School in Asmara in 1975, where then she immediately joined the armed struggle for independence as a female combatant participating in various disciplines. These disciplines included a member of clandestine freedom fighters, frontline combatant, the mass organization and mobilization section, and she eventually reached the rank of commissioner of a company within the army, as well as the political commissioner and deputy head at the Department of the Security Training Center within the liberation struggle. She had also served as the Central Committee member of the National Union of Eritrean Women in charge of the Khartoum branch from 1987 to 1991. During that time, she also gained a certificate in business administration at the African University College in Khartoum. After independence, she became an executive board member of the National Union of Eritrean Women between 1992 and 1999 as head of the Department of Rehabilitation and Social Services. She became a member of the international staff of the United Nations Transitional Administration in East Timor between January 2000 and June 2002. While in East Timor, she was a social affairs officer, which means a director of education and health in the district. And eventually she became the UN coordinator and advisor of the same district in a place called Monofai in East Timor. Senait gained her master's in business administration in 2006 at the Open University in American University of London. She was the Director General of the Land Transport Authority between 2003 and 2014. Most importantly for this discussion, it's good for the audience to know that on behalf of Hamade, the National Union of Eritrean Women, Senait had participated in many government delegations in relation to women's issues, including the 4th International World Conference of Women, commonly known as the Beijing Conference, which took place in 1995. She was a member of the Eritrean delegation for the Pan-African Women Peace Conference in Africa held in Tanzania in 1999. A member of the Eritrean delegation participated in constructive dialogue for CIDAW 456 periodic reports, all in Geneva. And she was a member of the Eritrean delegation who participated in the Africa Charter for Human and People's Rights, which took place in Mauritania, as well as many other side events, all related to Eritrean women, equality, and empowerment. The list really goes on in terms of the many achievements and the ways in which Senait participated, and we'd like to welcome her to this discussion too. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation for us to interview the two of you. We have these two influential, highly experienced women here today to discuss with us their experiences as younger women in the liberation struggle, but also to share with us their path, to not only their path, but also the path of their comrades, other women who have participated in post-conflict development and nation building. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation, comrades Christine and Senait. I would like to give you this opportunity to discuss a little bit about your personal experiences within your own respective liberation struggle. Shall we start with Christine?
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. I speak here today really in my personal capacity as a woman, an African woman, and a woman leader, but also as a woman who has gone through a lot of struggles in history. So I would say that really I am one of those girls who grew up in a refugee camp and basically didn't know whether I would finish primary school because my father didn't have enough money to take me to the next level. I was helped by my primary school teacher who offered to pay for the remaining part and then pushed me to study hard, out of which I got scholarships and told my father he will never have to worry about my school fees anymore. So I come from that point of view where I don't play victim, but I play victor. I don't be part of problems. I become part of solutions. I believe it is from that young age that I questioned myself, even when I was in secondary school. I was supposed to do sciences, but it took a long time for me to go to my school because I needed to produce citizenship form, which I didn't have. And it took me 2 weeks for my father, again, to beg another parent to pretend or to sort of adopt me as his daughter, through which I could get my papers. By then, the science classes were full, but when the headmistress, she was a lady, looked at my transcript, she said, but you passed arts, you passed sciences, no science course, but you could go for arts. So that's how I ended up doing arts, and eventually at university, ended up doing law. At law school, I'm saying all this a little bit because it's really part of what shaped me and pushed me to the struggle. Because at law school, one time the professor kept coming and saying, if you think you don't belong here, walk out of my class, either because you don't understand or you don't. So every time he said that, I thought, maybe he knows I'm a refugee and he knows I'm not supposed to be here. Law is a professional course for nationals, maybe. You know, I was so afraid of myself, even when I was pushing through life. So anyway, I walked out of university one day. I said, either I'm leaving university or I'm going to do another course. And I found a relative of my uncle who said, you go back to class. None of the people there was brighter than you, and no one cares really where you came from or what you do here that will shape your future. So go back. So I went back to school. But at that time, through all those roadblocks, I questioned myself, why? I actually, at university at one point, our parents, the politics in Uganda where we were as refugees, turned around, and they were, much as he had tried to find a job out of the camp, he was pushed back in the camp. I couldn't find my parents for a whole year. And I went to university and begged the wardens to keep me, and then went to UNHCR to go around the entire country searching. So I found them in a makeshift camp. Of course, then I had to go back to school. They had nowhere to put me. But when I went back, I really, this time I said, I need answers. First of all, why am I not in my country? What is my country? Where is it? Who is there who is supposed to be there and not me? And so many questions. That's how I met student associations. I started in these things as a student leader in the Rwandese Welfare Foundation, like where we, of course, because I was in need, that's how I connected to other kids and how our association started. So it's through that the Rwandese Patriotic Front mobilized us. Of course, then we were ready. You know, these things of the struggle, you have to, the necessary conditions, I think what we call them, that trigger you to say, you know, this is the time to fight. So the rest is almost like history because I barely finished my last exam. Actually, at the end of the war, I didn't know whether do I have a degree, I don't have a degree, because I left the last day of exam. Fortunately, I passed it. If I had to do a supplement or something, I would have no degree today. But I had passed my exam, And that's it. I never said goodbye to my parents or anything. I just left. So for me, experience of the struggle, searching for a homeland, has been a very big part of my life. I always tell my children and all the young ladies that I encounter that every generation has a mission. You have to search it, you have to fulfill it, or you betray it. If you betray it, you betray your people. So for me, at that time, that was my vision. I keep telling my daughters and my children, we found you a nation. It's your time to build it. You have to search for your own mission. At this time around, nobody taught me what to do, but through the challenges that I had. So anyway, it was good going through the struggle, because looking at it, I was also, by the way, part of the Beijing conference, very young. Like when we reached Beijing, it looked like a bourgeoisie meeting, like a meeting of Hillary Clinton and all these people. We were all running in the corridors. Nobody was allowing us to go in the plenary session. We met a CNN guy in the corridor and we grabbed his microphone and we started talking. We said, okay, so whose meeting is this one? Is it for women or is it for Hillary Clinton and big people and whatever? Where our voice, none of our people had a place to speak. And anyway, then everybody came looking for delegation from Rwanda. And then they saw these young ladies. Are you the delegation, actually? Anyway, just to say that these struggles, one thing, when you are in the liberation struggle, you, as a woman, you are fighting two wars. One is the national liberation, to liberate your country, but two is emancipation, to emancipate yourself as a woman, because you're going through things that are not traditionally women. Women are not supposed to be at the liberation struggle from the traditions of the old. That's why my father was shocked. He would never understand how I am. My mother understood me more than my father. My father took time because I was supposed to find a job and pay school fees for my siblings. I was not just supposed to go away. So anyway, to cut the long story short, it was a big experience. It is one where really also shaped where we are, I believe, as a country. I don't speak on behalf of Rwanda as an official, but as a human being, as a Rwandese, I can say that maybe part of how the women proved their worth in the struggle also gives them a place on the table as people who have proved that they are not there for the sake of being there, but they are there because they contributed to the struggle. But also it opens up the men. Normally it's the men on the table. So if they are taking decisions based on not knowing what the women's worth is, it's much more difficult. But if you have been on the front together, if you have, gone hungry together, if you have walked all those hills together, if you have mobilized resources together, campaigned together, everything together, I think it shows itself that women are worth. Then, of course, the leadership of the country, because sometimes you prove your worth, but still you're not on the table. So it means that the leadership have not clicked or have not got. After the war, I was in government, also in charge of refugee repatriation and victims putting the country together. For now, that is me, and that has shaped my resilience as a human being to date. And I think this is the thing that pushed me to work for the UN, because having served my people, I felt that I could also serve humanity. And I am driven by causes. When I see a cause, I jump for it. And whether it was in Zimbabwe where I served, whether it was in Eritrea, whether it is here in Mauritius, I am always driven by the people, to serve the people from where I sit.
Thank you very much. Driven to serve by the people. There are definitely some very interesting parallels between your experience in Rwanda and that of the experience of Eritrean women liberation fighters. Senait, please tell us then about your personal experiences during the liberation struggle.
Thank you so much for inviting us to this panel to share our experience. and talk about Eritrean women. But let me start by saying Happy International Women's Day, March 8th, because it's a token of our struggle for women's rights. And imagine it's been celebrated for 110 years internationally. And in Eritrean women experience, it's about 41 years. So the struggle for women's emancipation is a long journey. It takes time. It's a long process that we have to be ready for it. And remembering 8 March is not just for the sake of celebrating festivities, but it is for renewing our determination, renewing our commitment towards this just cause. So happy March 8th again for every one of us. My personal experience, I don't know how to start it, but it was in 1975 when I was a high school student in Prince Makonnen, which is now Asmara Comprehensive, that the Derg came to power and the Emperor Haile Selassie was ousted from power. And the Derg came to Asmara, to Eritrea, and they started to organize meetings in our high schools. And they were telling us that we will go for their... So every one of us said, wait a minute, why would we go? We better go and join our brothers and sisters in the struggle. So we started to rebel while we were in the city, while we were with our parents, while we were students in the high school. So we changed our mind and we started to get organized, make contacts with the freedom fighters. And for many reasons, we started this to believe in our independence and to play our role as young students, boys and girls. And some of the reasons why we started to get ready to go to the movement or to join the armed struggle was the very fact of the presence of the urban combatants or urban freedom fighters in Asmara. They were organizing a lot of operations, sabotaging enemy interests, going to the prison and taking out all the prisoners from what they were imprisoned, where they were imprisoned. And we were so amazed and inspired by this movement of the freedom fighters in the city. So we started to make contacts and to get ourselves organized. The other thing was we're hearing a lot of information that comes from the village, because at that time, all the villages outside Asmara, in the lowlands, in the highlands, they were being torched down, they were burning, and the villagers were being killed by the army of the Ethiopian soldiers. So a lot of atrocities, a lot of inhuman acts were being taken, and this also was one of the elements that inspired us to go to the struggle. The other thing was the freedom fighters were in the outskirts of Asmara, in the vicinity of Asmara, not far away, maybe 10 kilometers away from Asmara. And rumors were coming, news were coming, informations were leaking. And they were also telling us that there are women fighters, girls joining the national movement. Why? Why not? So we have to also be a part of that. That was also a good indication. And finally, when we rejected the very existence and presence of Derg in Asmara, they started to focus on the use in the students, and they started to kill many students as much as they can. So every day, every morning, you go out, you find your friend dead and so on, and on the streets. Strangulation was the mechanism. They were just hanging everybody. And not only that, they were also annihilating and killing the whole family in different areas of Asmara. So we started to be organized as a clandestine group or in the underground cells, and we started to support the urban operation. And we became members of the urban clandestine movement. But at the end of the day, we cannot stay hold long in Asmara, and we went and joined the armed struggle. In the struggle, it's a new role, it's a new life. What you were used, you don't get it there. And after taking our military training, we were assigned in different disciplines, different wars. For me, for the first time, I was in the front line. I took up arms. I was a fighter, fighting and participating in different battles against the enemy. And then eventually I also went to the Department of Mass Organization and the Mass Mobilization section, which was a very critical organization or department at that time that was really raising the awareness of the consciousness of our people and helping them to be politicized and be ready to join the armed struggle. And that was really an interesting job that or role that I got. And clandestine movements and security, etc., were the roles that I personally had, and until the day of independence. So I was so proud and I was so happy to be part of this endeavor, to be part of the struggle. For us, that situation was very challenging, very challenging. There is scarcity of water, scarcity of food. You have to carry your gun with 120 or 300 bullets. You live in trenches. You have to be always alert in case enemy attack comes, etc. So this was very challenging situation. But then, because we were determined, we have our own agenda. We have our own objective, which is to get independence and freedom. We were determined to do it. So the challenge turned to opportunities. And once we joined the armed struggle, we were, building our self-confidence. We were getting a lot of training, a lot of knowledge, acquirement, a lot of experience sharing, and finally we became very strong freedom fighters. And we have two objectives. We have two caps, as the saying goes. One, to fight for the national liberation for independence, and two, to be emancipated, to fight for our own rights. So with this dual task, we were contributing as much as we can until the day of liberation. And thank you.
With the two enormous tasks that both Eritrean and Rwandan liberation fighters had tried to achieve, within each struggle, there were different reforms or instances where behaviors might have changed in order for the men and the society at large to realize the valuable role of Eritrean women and Rwandan women at the same time. Can you give us some insight, Senait, about the different reforms that were able to take place before Eritrea's de facto independence, and especially that in within the liberated areas of Eritrea?
For the first time when I was part of the Department of Mobilization and the Organization for Mass, I can see that Eritrean women in the rural areas, they were, joining the armed struggle was beyond their imagination because of the traditional role that, or limited role that they have had. And they thought joining the armed struggle or taking up arms was meant only for boys. So there was this song that we were hearing every time when we passed by a village and the girls were fetching water and fetching woods or sitting in front of their home. They were just saying, I wish I was a boy. In the time of the revolution, I wish I was a boy. Why Anagdi is the greener version of it. I wish I was a boy. So down deep in their feeling, they thought that this revolution is meant only for boys. And since we're young and our hair was cut and we don't have earrings, anything that could be, make us look like a girl, they thought we were young boys. So in our next discussion to come, we started to organize and have meetings with them, and we told them that we are girls, like the same as they are, and because of the traditional role we were and all this prejudice and stereotypings, we were not allowed to join the armed struggle. But now you are, since the policy of the armed struggle itself is, it believed that without the participation of women, the struggle cannot be successful. So we have to mobilize, we have to raise the consciousness of the girls to come and join the armed struggle. Not only girls, but the whole community. So it didn't take so much time, and they started to pour to the movement. So the limitation of the culture had played its role. In fact, there was another experience also, which is really good to mention it. In the lowland areas, we were also doing this mobilization stuff, and we had a meeting with a Tigray woman, and they said they don't want to come to the meeting because they think we were boys. So finally, one wise lady came out and asked me, okay, let me, come with me in my room. And we went to her hut, which is called Agnet. And she told us, are you boys or girls? We are girls. So let me see, take your shirts out. So we took our shirts out for her, and she believed that we were girls. And from that day on, she was the best person to organize her village, not only her village, but all her neighboring village, the men and women together. So this was a kind of breaking the ceiling for girls to come and join and have, different role, a paradigm shift, you can say, in the roles they have previously. So this was a good experience to share with.
Christine, I think there was also similar experiences. I mean, for the millions of Rwandese having been living in exile as refugees, maybe you've also have some experience to share with us in terms of how you yourself, being the chairperson of the Rwandese Refugees Foundation and doing different types of work, what type of things have you or your comrades done to create the sense and desire for women's emancipation before the actual liberation? If you can give us some insight.
Yeah, it was actually a protracted war. Even that, the entire liberation struggle is always protracted, but also the war of emancipation is as even more protracted, because we are still even struggling up to today since then. But what I could say for us, like practical examples that showed it. For example, when I felt ready to join the movement, I didn't know where and how. I saw like people, first of all, because we had experienced the liberation in Uganda and we had seen our schoolmates going, and we were saying, where do people go for these things? So in the beginning, it started when there were not many women. It was like a men's club, and very, very discreet, very, very quiet men's club. The few women, I think, who had joined early in the 70s, the few women were almost like, I don't know, different. They were not in the executive committee or in any leadership forum. They were there. But eventually, I think the ideology changed around, I think, 1987. The ideology changed and the name changed to the Rwandese Patriotic Front. It became a liberation movement. With that came the openness, mass movement. Everybody is welcome. The people who were leading the organization then really came for the youth, the women, the girls, the machinery, the leadership of the movement was open to, but even then, because I remember I was in mass mobilization myself. First, I was in diplomacy, I was in communication, I was in many things. One time I went to mobilize in some country. I will not name it because everywhere around is where we went to mobilize to collect money and to do like that. There I found a meeting of only men. And that is not on the front, because we did work in the front, we called it in the bush, in the trenches, but we also did work abroad, or organizing committees abroad in the diaspora. So in this meeting, I work with young lady and only men. And then it hit me that if I start asking questions about women, then I may lose my audience. So I pretended maybe I'm a young boy or what, I don't know what they see in me, but I was coming from the front and I was bringing news of the front. I was mobilizing. It was time when the war was going on, we were even talking to press conferences, we were telling governments, we were meeting. And then I went on. I went seeking for appointments with governments, with the press, and the wife, because we used to live in people's homes. We had no money. It is people who fed us. They're the ones who accommodated us. So in this home where I was staying, the wife was not a member, was not being called in the meeting. And so when I told her, I'm waiting for an appointment from this government, please, if they call, say, no, I cannot touch these things, no. So anyway, on my last day, my second last day leaving, because I would go here, then go to another country, I just told the men, I have something to ask you. Where are your wives? Where are your sisters? Where are your cousins? Where are they? Do you want to tell me they are enemies? Do you want to tell me they are careless? They are gonna be, because even we are beyond careless. I am on the press conference telling the whole world, what is secret are you hiding now from your wife when you just accompanied me to the press media to say where we are, why struggle is so. So they were all like numb. They said, mea culpa, guilty as charged. So I said, now I want a meeting with women only. And they started saying, okay, we are going to organize. The chairperson wanted to come with me in the meeting. I said, no, I will handle this with them because I want to understand. I want them to have their free space to tell me what's going on. Of course, we had it's a long story. I think we will have to have series of these ones to even come up with books. But the women told me that they were never invited to these things. They wanted so much. I went away with so much money, so much. Some of them were doctors. Imagine, some of them were housewives, but who knew about the struggle. Some of them were students. And just to tell you that it is protracted even within. But generally speaking, when I told them, they said, oh my God, you shouldn't report this in the central committee because what will they think, this organization? But also just to say that it was helpful that we had the structures already during the struggle. We have the women's movement. Even within the civilians population, there were structures. We used to call them Abahutu Mugambi. They had a name. And then we also, even in the military, we had even a unit. It was called Yankee Mobile. For when it was ceasefire, when it was not fighting, they would be in Yankee Mobile. We had a leadership who really organized, because one time we had a congress of women coming from all over. And the chairperson of the High Command, who was the president of Rwanda today, was in this meeting for 3 days. He had left the front line, came to this meeting. And so, of course, it was in the beginning not obvious, but, and it was tough. I wouldn't say it wasn't, but I think when you have a cause, when you have a cause, and right now we are talking about the liberation struggle, but it could be any struggle. It could be any struggle. When you're clear in your mind what you want to do, it doesn't mean matter your gender. It doesn't matter your age even. I started struggle when I was 19 years old. So I always tell young girls, leadership is today, not tomorrow. I started leadership at 19 years old. So there's nothing you're going to tell me about. These are young, these are what, because you have to have a cause. Even today, I tell young people, fine, my cause was to find a country, but maybe your cause will be to stop gender-based violence. Maybe your cause would be to build your nation. Maybe your cause is to preserve the climate change, to fight climate change, or whatever the cause, be a leader in what you are doing. So like I always tell them, like problems, these challenges in the struggle, they are temporary. They are very temporary. I remember when I was in Eritrea, I used to go to the refugee camps, the Somali refugee camps. in Massawa. And then normally they would prepare for me a speech. And I end up not even handling this speech. I end up just looking at the refugees and telling them just my life story. One time, one young refugee Somali girl had been married off at 15, had a young kid, and she really didn't want this marriage. So I told her, if you don't want, leave it. What do you want to do? She really wanted to study and become a doctor. And so somehow she got connected in UNHCR. Oh, when I came to hear later on, she had connected with a German NGO, and I think now she's in German studying medicine. So you may be in a certain situation, in a certain problem, and it consumes you, but it will pass. It will pass. Resilience is the best thing in every situation. That situation will pass. Every human being is like born like a diamond. Things will come and cover you. They'll throw stones on you or water on you, but just remove it a little bit, and then your diamond comes back. So this, all I can say about the experience in the struggles. It was tough, but it was doable, and it shaped our generation. I'm sure we are spilling over to your generation and even those who are young.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You bring up the importance of resilience, that also being part of the theme of International Women's Day, the theme set out by the National Union of Eritrean Women. The both of you have had used your resilience to participate in the liberation struggle, but then you also carried on that resilience to play a role in post-liberation, post-conflict development, and throughout the nation-building process. Christine, you already touched up upon this, how young women should be able to understand their generational mission in this nation-building process. The both of you, Senait and Christine, you joined liberation struggles at such a young age. Can you just give us a little bit of insight on how and when can young women learn from your generation? What should they really pick up on to have this kind of resilience to continue the mission of their generation, which has a lot to do with development and nation building, I believe.
Okay, in the UN, the theme for this year is Women in Leadership in a COVID world. This is just to show and tell young women out there and men that struggles will continue. That's life, and they come in different shapes and in different forms. So at any one point in life, you can then jump in to contribute, to make your contribution. Now, speaking as a UN official, I can tell you that, of course, we talk about the SDGs, SDG 5, and I can tell you that throughout this whole struggle of COVID, women have been at the forefront as healthcare workers, as caretakers, as doctors, as researchers, as so much, trying to hold on to the society in these tough times. So what I can say, what the young generation can learn us in terms of resilience, first of all, well, it's very difficult to copy and paste. If I could, I would, squeeze the juice out of me and give you to drink. Maybe this is the portion that will do. But unfortunately, like a butterfly, you've seen a butterfly, when it is still in its
the cocoon.
It has to be in that cocoon. It has to fight its struggles to get out. Then it has to bloom. You just have to be in the right environment. But if you even try to help it, like to scratch and let the butterfly out, it will never fly. It might come out with one wing, not flying. because struggles in life are important. They shape who you are. They help you grow. And it's up to you actually to search inside yourself. And, the most important thing is confidence, is believing in yourself, is giving an opportunity. What me and Senait are trying to fight for is equal opportunity. Give boys and girls the equal opportunity. Don't be like this old man who has no money and says it's his son who will go to school, his daughter will not go to school. Don't say that, somebody has an opportunity, but because she's girl, you're going to marry her off and then whatever. What we are fighting for is to give the girls a stage. I fought for my stage. Today, actually, maybe many families are still fighting for that stage, but there are some families where we have enlightened moms, and we will fight this struggle, even if your dad will not, whatever, but most dads are also getting enlightened. But in these international fora, like right now, I'm struggling for people to get vaccines, migrant workers, especially women, people who normally left behind, pulling them up. In many communities, you find those left behind are women. And it is so all I can do now is actually had to fight to be on this table, because now I make decisions. I manage the budget of the UN, and I can say, I can check the project, how many women, how many men are beneficiaries. So I think all we can do now, I think I speak for Senait, she will speak for herself, is we've done our part. In fact, these days, I enjoy this. Thank you for inviting me on this, because now I feel like it's my time to give back. I used to laugh at my mom that she likes to tell stories. Now I'm like my mom. I invite myself to university to simply talk. And sometimes I just talk about my story, and that's it. I give pro bono lectures on women, on leadership, but I end up just speaking about where I came from, where I am, and telling these young girls, I like to address girls, I do address boys too, but telling them if I could, and I had no money to finish primary school, and you girls are here, university on a scholarship of money from your parents, then you could do much more.
It's important to mention in the struggle for women's rights that we have to believe the women's issue is a social issue. If you see our national charter, it says bluntly and clearly that women's issue is a social issue. This is number one. Number two, that we have to have solidarity between men and women. One of the success stories, why we became successful in the armed struggle, was that we were working together side by side with men. And we were getting a lot of assistance and help, and we were giving back assistance and help to men. So solidarity is very important. And now in the process of nation building and the coming generation to come, you have to put in consideration that the women's issue is a social issue. It's not only for women to be thrown to women on the table of the woman, but it is the burden of the community at large. And then you have to have a solidarity between men and women to solve this issue for the generations to come. When I say the women's issue is a social issue, I will give you a very good example where we became successful. It is the problem of FGM. FGM, female genital mutilation in Eritrea, is a success story. It is really a woman's issue, but it is not only a woman's issue, it is an issue of the society. So right at the beginning, when we had our founding Congress in 1979, one of the resolutions passed was we have to tackle FGM. And this was very important. And it was applauded and accepted by everybody. But then we have to go back to the community and tell them the side effects and why it is practiced. And finally, after independence, there was this proclamation which was issued. It is that prohibited FGM totally, which was issued in 2007, Proclamation 158. But not only that, law is one thing, but consciousness of the community is another thing. You have to raise the consciousness of the people. I know Christine was visiting some villages which declared zero FGMC practice, meaning they stopped it totally. And how did we do it? By bringing everybody on. Because this issue is not only women's issue, it is a social issue. So everybody should be part of it. And we have FGM, anti-FGM committees and underage marriage committees as well. Because, traditionally marriage was taking place like a girl is 14, 15 years, maybe less. But now it is 18 and above. The law supports it to be 18 and above, but then the community supports it because we have managed to raise the consciousness of our communities. And we have set up committees all across the country. And in each region, there are committees set up, grassroots committees, beginning from the regional office or the governor's office down to the village. And do you know the number of committees are over 700? But the number of men in these committees are majority than women, meaning they are taking this toll to their hands to support women to solve this problem forever. So we have to, this is a very, very good experience that we can get from. We can share it with other friends or women in Africa, that this issue of women is not something to be left on the table of National Union or on the table of Women's Ministry or on the table of groups of women. It must be the burden of the community. And this is how we brought out an experience in our during the armed struggle, and we continue to do it until now. So that's why we are now about 0.6 FGM prevalence in Eritrea. Glad to share this experience. And it should pass to the coming generation to come. Rahel, you have to know, as young generation, that women's issue is not only your problem, it is the problem of society at large. And second, everybody should be equal. And you have to make very strong solidarity between men.
Thank you very much, Senait. Yeah, Senait, we'd love to hear about your own quote unquote transition between a liberation fighter and a member of government delegations. You worked at the UN with the Transitional Administration East Timor. You were the Director General of Land Transport and Authority between 2003 and 2014. You've obviously been a woman of leadership for a long time. Can you please give us some insights on how young women can also take up their role, take up the mission of their generation?
Before I jump on the second question, the first one was like to give you some highlights on the role of women in the armed struggle. I was just talking about my personal experience, but generally, when women came in court and joined the armed struggle, they had we can categorize their role in 3 or 4 elements. Number one, they were frontline fighters, which was an extremely tough job to do. And that is the first time they are being exposed to this kind of activity, you may say, bearing in mind the traditional barriers they had in terms of their role, very limited role that doesn't, pass from the 4 corners of the kitchen. Now they break that and join the armed struggle, and they have this special role. What Christine was trying to paraphrase was she was participating in a meeting where men were only, attending that meeting, etc. And the way she challenged that was really good. But in Eritrean situation, women were encouraged by men. It is a vice versa. Women were encouraged by men to join the armed struggle. And this makes it a little bit different or unique from other experiences. The national liberation movements, they try to organize the Department of Mass Mobilization section because they want to bring girls to join to the armed struggle and to have this unique role or different role. So it's the other way around. We have this immense encouragement to play our role in all walks of life within the armed struggle. So it was not only in the front line as fighters, but in the as a clandestine movement within the army line, within the enemy, even up to going down to South to Ethiopia to work undercover, so that we get important information, security informations, fundraise and mobilize young generation to come to join the army struggle. So one is the front line. The second one is the clandestine activity that women had, risked their life. You are in that kind of operation. If you are caught by the enemy, and that's the end of it, you'll be killed. And they were ready to give this kind of sacrifice for the just cause of independence. The third thing, the third role was the clandestine, the women in the diaspora. There were a lot of women in the diaspora who organized themselves to support the armed struggle. They were the main financiers, you can say. They were working. They had their own jobs, paid jobs, but they were just sending their salary, total salary, to the armed struggle. This is an immense contribution made by Eritrean women. Not only that, they were trying to make, to fundraise, and not only fundraise, to make Eritrean friends, to familiarize the just cause of the armed struggle. The fourth was the Eritrean women's role in the liberated and semi-liberated areas. When a village is liberated, you have to put some institutions to, administer that village. And I remember, Rahel, you were mentioning that for the first time, there was a land reform conducted in 1977 in the liberated areas. Land reform to give access of land use to women. This was in their dreams. It has never been in practice in Eritrea during the past years. So for the first time, land reform activity was taken, and women were given equal access for the land use. But not only that, they were a member of the committee who were in charge of the land reform. So this is a unique and new role that women were trying to get used to. The other thing is that the first village leadership was formed in 1977. Imagine, in the liberated area. Before that, women have no right to be part of the leadership. I remember there is a historical background in Eritrea. Our first constitution was given to us by United Nations in 1952. In that constitution, in Article 20, which calls for the right to elect and be elected, it bluntly states that who have the right to elect and be elected, it is male only, age above 21. In that constitution, in Article 20, it is bluntly, stated. So women have no right to enjoy elections and to be elected and to elect and be elected. But it was in 1977 that this history was reversed. So for the first time in the village election, women were elected by the community, and they started to lead the everyday or the day-to-day situation of their village. The other point is the village courts were established in 1977 in the semi-liberated and liberated areas, and women became part of it. So the leadership or the nascent institutions of the future Eritrea to come were, beginning to hatch up in the liberated villages, and women were part of it. And not only that, they took up arms and became women's militia. They do their civilian work every day, but they have arms. They were trained in case enemy comes, so they should, protect themselves and the villagers as well. So the changing role dramatically started to take shape in the liberated areas. And of course, not only this, the EPLF started to encourage women to organize themselves in their own organization, because they have dual task, as we said. One is to fight for the liberation of Eritrea or independence of Eritrea, and the second is for their own emancipation. So if they are not organized, if they are not, conscious enough on their own rights, who is going to do this job for them? So they were encouraged to have their own organization as early as 1979. And they started to lead themselves to, organize all women across the country in the diaspora under the enemy lines, etc. So they became very strong women, and who know how to lead, who know how to, struggle to look for their rights, etc. So in totality, you can say the role of women during the armed struggle, during the struggle, was in various sections of the struggle, not only in the combat line, also in the auxiliary lines, the support sections or support departments for the armed struggle. I mean, you have never seen a woman driver, you have never seen a woman technician, you have never seen a woman operator, radio operator, you have never seen an embedded journalist in the army, you have never seen an embedded doctor, barefoot doctor. This is a new role that was given to women. They were taught to do it. They were encouraged to do it. And they have built their confidence in the process. And they have made a lot of change. And eventually, the share of women in the People's Army was about 30 to 33% of the total People's Army. And I remember in 1977, when the liberated towns and cities were recaptured by the enemy again, EPLF, was forced to conduct strategic withdrawal. So all the girls who have connections with the Gadalti or with the freedom fighters, they cannot stay behind and give themselves to the enemy. So everyone, all the families, including their kids, they came out of the towns and cities and joined the struggle in the bushes. So imagine, we had so many huge number of girls joining the movement at that time. This was in 1977, and actually we have a nickname for them, called them Cambodia or Vietnam. Tell them that they were big in number, and of course they changed the ratio of women. That's why we reached finally 30 to 33% of the total of the armed struggle. So women played immense role to bring the independence, and they paid great sacrifice. They were so determined. They were exemplary. You can see if you are there firmly fighting, the boy who was brought up to be above you in terms of determination. What would he say? He will just increase his determination because you are becoming exemplary in giving sacrifice and determination. So this has changed, the situation in the struggle, and women's rights, women's movement, or women's role was great in history. So what I'm trying to say here is that we were encouraged to join the movement by the national movement, by the armed struggle, by the movement itself, and we were given equal rights, and we were encouraged to participate in all walks of life, because there were 2-3 principles. The armed struggle cannot be successful without the participation of women. This is one. And equality through practical participation, not in theory. It's not only in classes, in discussions. It is practical. You have to bring it practical. And then you have your own organization, women's organization, to make you more powerful and to become very productive and formidable power at that time. So this is one thing that I would like to mention about the role of women in the struggle. The other thing is the post-independence. I mean, after independence, the situation is different. Environment is different. During the armed struggle, it is to fight for independence. After independence, it is a process of nation building. Imagine you have a country economically war-torn, a country devastated, a country under so many years, above 30, 35, 40 years of war. So how can you mobilize your own people so that they can play their role in the nation building process? I don't think this was an easy job to do. The best thing that I could mention here is that, like by the same token that we say, without the participation of women, independence could have not been achieved. The same thing happened. Without the participation of women in nation building, there will not be national economy, advanced economy of a nation. So it was a must to bring the 50% of the Eritrean population again to the process of nation building. There are 3 or 4, policy guidelines that are worth mentioning to have, to build, to construct and build this nation. You need clear policy guidelines. Number 1 was to, respect equal rights. You have to respect equal rights of women. Without that, you cannot have a modern economy built. So this is, you can find it in our national charter. It is bluntly stated. Without respecting equal rights of women, without letting women to participate in the process of nation building, modern economy cannot be. The other thing is without narrowing the gap between the rural and urban, without bringing the marginalized to the on board, you cannot build an economy. You cannot have a nationality.
Okay, so what I was saying previously, I think I gave an example of an all-men meeting, and but just want to make a correction that this didn't represent the entire movement. I was just telling you how everything grew slowly by slowly. It started by them, especially those who were in the diaspora, those who were on the front line. They knew everything, and they were embracing, they were mobilizing all of us. But some in the diaspora thought that politics is for men. So I was giving an example of one cell that I visited. But that does not represent the entire movement thinking and the ideology. The ideology was that it's a mass movement, and that's why we were there in the first place. But maybe I will say a little bit about, I think somebody asked about the global understanding, or even maybe about other experiences. I could say that, in terms of us influencing the next generation, just so you know, we were inspired by the previous generation. When I was joining the struggle, I was reading all about ANC, about EPLF, about all this Frelimo, movements that were front of me. And the women, the women that were in those movements, when you saw their women, we were inspired to say that there. So I think generation can inspire other generations. And that's something to come up with. Then another thing that, I could say there are so many ways of looking at women in leadership and measuring. For me, what I see as a common thread in most liberation movements, sometimes even, it's not so much about how many women in parliament, how many women in, that also is important. But I think what I see most important, and I've seen it in different settings, even when I was in Eritrea, the participation of women in communities, the voice of women in communities. The fact that when you call women for vaccine, they all come, or when they have to vaccinate their children, they go. When there's a nutrition program, they go. When they have to build dams, they go. When, for me, this is a huge measure of women's involvement and women emancipation. Of course, we want to see women at different levels of leadership, but as we know, the heart of our countries, the biggest majority of our societies is in the communities. If the women in the communities are not organized, they are not mobilized, they are not what, then you would fit few people in the cabinet or few people in parliament, but for whom are you doing these things? So for me, I like the idea of empowering communities, ensuring that women in communities. On the global note, we worry a little bit because there's so many numbers that show us that women are still working for less than men, and some statistics show that it will be until 2050 that you'll bridge the gap. And the Secretary General was sort of embarrassed at this figure and saying, how can I tell the grandchildren of my grandchildren and my grandchildren that this is how the situation will look like? So there are certain things that we have to work with, but he believes that gender equality, women empowerment is a matter of economics, you know. Also, like I can quote my president, President Kagame, he just says it's a matter of common sense. You know, you're not doing women a favor by putting them on the table or by that. And with that, I can say a few things. Well, I am now in the UN. I am not in Rwanda, but I was in Rwanda before, and I've seen things evolve. And a part of the growth of the number of women in leadership and the number of women doing different things, I think it's all about, you know, it is all about continued, what can I say, advocacy, because it's a mind shift, it's a change. In Rwanda, we don't have much time, but we used to have legends. Us women who were in the struggle, we call ourselves Ndabaga. Like it's a legend of this girl in the history who tried to join the fighting then, because then you needed a boy. If you were in the fighting and you need to go home and rest, you needed a boy, a baby boy. And when the wife gave birth to a baby girl, it was like crying in the entire village that our son will never come back because they are just given birth. So this girl went and burnt her breasts, hid herself, pretended to be a boy for her to have access. And then she went into the training, she finished, and she liberated her father, Shigwa. It became a huge legend, like every woman who wants to be like Ndabaga or stuff like that. So anyway, cut the long story short, we have a few examples in our context where we know it works. We know it's not enough. We need to do more. But looking at the regional or the global level, we still have a lot to push, even when we go to the CEDAW, CSW, even the International Women's Day itself is meant to sensitize the world. The entire world is not yet sensitized. And I think it's good that we who have gone through this, we speak, we give our experiences, and we continue the advocacy. But otherwise, same message to young girls on Women's Day. Challenges are simply temporary. Leadership is today and not tomorrow. And leadership is for you. If I can do it, you can do it.
Excellent message.
Women were part of the national liberation struggle, and by the same token, they have to be part and parcel of the process of nation building. The government believes without the participation of women, we could not build the nation again. So this is very important policy guideline. And if you base yourself in this, and then how are you going to do it? How do you go about doing it? Three things that could encompass women. One is you have to review all your legislation and give women legal protection in independent Eritrea. Two, you have to mobilize your human capital so that you will use effectively and efficiently in the process of nation building. Three, education is very important for girls. So the government focused on these three elements to encourage women to be part of the whole stuff of nation building. So when we come to the first point, which is legal protection, after independence in 1991, imagine the first day, you can say, 1991, number one proclamation up to the fifth proclamation, they were meant to review all the laws that we got from the colonial past and to see each article, each phrase that thwarts or limits the role of women or that discriminates the role of women. This was to be repealed and reviewed, repealed and amended. This is number one thing. And it gave Eritrean women legal backing. The second one is to enact new laws, which we don't have during the colonial time. One is the land law. It gave equal access. In fact, without giving women the right to use the land for habitat and for agriculture, where is the woman's rights? How can you shape it? You cannot. So land is the basic thing, and women will have the access of land through by using this law. Proclamation for labor. It gave equal opportunity of labor. It gives equal opportunity of labor and same payment for the same job. You have the nationality and the citizenship proclamation, which gave by the same token equal rights of women in terms of nationality. And this was 1992. And then you have the proclamation for the national service. This was amazing. This was great because the national service, if it was being established by discriminating and excluding women, what would have been our position as women fighters? I mean, we will start again, go back to the bushes and, fight it. But it cannot be done like that, since we believe in the heroic role of women. So by the same line, in the nation build, the same thing should be repeated. So the National Service Proclamation also came to protect women and help them participate in all walks of life in the government and in the nation building process, you can say. So one is give legal protection. I don't know how the Rwandan women did this. I'm sure they have already started. I mean, as soon as they got their country back, they reviewed all the laws to give women legal protection and equality. And this is unshakable foundation. Without doing this, Rahel, you are asking me how the coming generation or the young generation will do it. It should not be on talks and agendas and speaking. We have to have, a strong foundation, and this is the law. The law of the country should be there to protect the young generation for the coming generations to come. The second thing is the education. How can you, employ a woman? How can you, assign a girl in different positions if she doesn't have any education? So we launched education program for girls, both for boys and girls. In 1991, do you know that we had only 137 schools? Only 137 schools. But after we have tried to, conquer this, we had now 1,987 schools from KG up to kindergarten. And what is the share of girls? It is 49% attendance in participation in schools. And what is the gender parity index, which shows the participation or the role of girls, the activity of girls? It's up to 0.91, which is like 1-to-1 in the basic education. If you go to the higher education, they are 42.2%, and we have Eritrean science and technology, where women have the share of 41%. In 1991, it was only 2.5%. Imagine in the last 25 to 30 years how we jumped from 2.5 to 41%. And we have so many women engineers, so many women professionals coming out of this profession or faculty. Medical school, we have 31%. In health sciences, they are 44%. In agriculture, it was 12.6%. Imagine now they are 50.1%. In fact, more than the boys, girls are participating. And this is very important for women because these graduates are going to the farms to contact the rural women, the rural women in the remote areas. So they are helping and assisting the rural girls and the rural farmers as well. And in business, in management, in leadership qualities, they are 44%. So we have many women leaders coming out of these schools. We have many women lawyers which they are changing their role in the justice system. For instance, the attorneys, they are 37% are girls in the office of the Attorney General, because so many lawyers have been coming from the law school that we have. In marine science, you name it. The other most important is their presence in the technical vocational education. We have about 10 to 11 technical vocational schools across the country, plus the Sawa Technical and Vocational School. Now, what is the share of girls? they are about 47%. Previously, in 1991, 1992, they were 15%. And what do you mean by, what does this mean? If you are graduating a lot of girls from this technical school, you're going to have machine operators, you're going to have woodwork graduates, you're going to have drivers, you're going to have mechanics, you name it, draftswomen, junior engineers, etc. So focusing on education and helping girls to educate, you're just laying the ground. Remember, we said you have legal protection, and now we are encouraging them to be professionals as well. So combine this, they are going to make it, and they are making it confidently. I can speak about it confidently because I'm here witnessing what is going on. Now the young generation, how can we pass the torch to the younger generation? I think this is something natural. I have never experienced it myself, like somebody was telling me to do this, and a girl or a woman, deep down in your blood, you just follow the path and take it. But it doesn't rule out that the need of consciousness raising, the need of mobilization, the need of consultancy, the need of all these steps should be gone. One of the tasks of the National Union is, for instance, to do this, to pass the terrific heroic story, the role that you have been playing in the armed struggle, so that the coming generation would follow suit. And I think the last 30 years, it's a process of nation building process. And in the 30 years, what have we achieved? We have achieved a lot. So many young girls are now graduates. So many young girls are now working in all walks of the country. And they are not marginalized. They are not discriminated. But 50%, I leave it to them. It's equality of women or emancipation of women is not something that will be given to you like bread or whatever. It's not like that. It is achievable. You have to achieve it. You have to get it. You have to fight for it. So 50%, the government, your people, your community, they are giving you, playing ground. You are equally treated. You are not discriminated. You have the opportunity to learn. But then remains 50%, it's your role. You have to grab it. Grab this opportunity and use it. So don't wait for somebody to tell you to do this and that. Once the ground is laid for you, just grab it. And opportunity only comes once. That's it. So I share what Christine was saying. Leadership is for now. So you do it. You fight for your own emancipation. You fight for your own struggle. You build your confidence. You have to build your academic level, your level of consciousness, your awareness, global. In fact, try to understand what the global situation is in terms of women's emancipation and role. I think the young generation is following suit here in Eritrea, and I appreciate the role they are playing, but still, we as now becoming older generation or previous generation, we have to pass the torch, which this panel that you have organized in a way is one kind of mechanism that we can share our experience with the young generation so that they can. I remember it was in Asmara when we were high school students, when we were, trying to organize ourselves and try to find urban freedom fighters so that we can play our share. There were university students from Addis and university students from Asmara, and they were starting to give us orientations on what independence means, all these basic things, what Eritrean history is, how we were annexed forcibly, etc. And one lady, a university student, she talked about emancipation, or emancipation of women. That was, for me, for the first time I heard the word emancipation. Wait a minute, what is emancipation? Okay, so, she passed the torch to us because she was our senior. And my colleagues, we discussed about it and we started to ask what emancipation is, what we should do, etc. So it helped us in a way to shape ourselves. So, talking, even going to the universities, as Christine was saying, using the proper channels like associations. You have youth association, you have workers association, you have women's association. Use these institutions to pass your experience and to show them the path, the true path towards the final end of emancipation of women.
Thank you very much, comrades Christine and Senait, for all your insight. It's very inspiring to hear about your personal experiences that represent the experiences of a lot of women from Eritrea and Rwanda, respectively. I hope that the viewers of this show appreciate this discussion as much as I have, as being from a younger generation. I think it's, especially when it comes to International Women's Day and when we celebrate Women's Month, that we take the time to reflect on the huge sacrifices that your generation has undergone in order for my generation to have the things that you described tonight, the laws in place for us to ensure our rights, and and also what you have described, Christine, in terms of changing the society to see the developed role that women, including young women, can play in every aspect of liberation, emancipation, post-conflict development, and nation building. Every generation does have its mission, and we are very fortunate, us from the younger generation, to have a good stepping stone to achieve our mission because of women like yourselves. So thank you very much for this discussion.